All right, and we are back. And today we're back with the first episode, I guess the only episode of the Jewish Denominations Explained video by UsefulCharts. So, guys, I just finished the Christian Denominations video. The Useful Charts order for the chart is on the way. I just got a notification about it recently. That chart is coming. You'll see it right here in the background somewhere, probably maybe somewhere around there, maybe somewhere around here. You'll see it when it gets here. But guys, I love the Christian Denominations video, and I don't want you guys to just think that this was just going to be like about Christian videos, because this was a whole journey around like just religion in general, just for my personal self, and I'm bringing it on the channel. Just like knowing about the different religions in general, and kind of like finding out about them for myself. I kind of went through the different denominations of Christianity, obviously, so I'm going now through for the Jewish denomination. So this will be an interesting journey. I'm coming in here completely blank slate. I barely even knew there were different denominations of Judaism. It's like I kind of knew, but it wasn't. You guys know what I mean. So yeah, with that being said, please remember, guys, like, comment, subscribe. If you like the commentary, if you like what I'm doing here, if you enjoy my presence, go ahead. And if you're not familiar with Useful Charts, I'm sure most of you are, but if you're not familiar with them, go check them out. Link will be in the bio. Go ahead and hit like, comment, subscribe to his channel as well. And remember, guys, here's the serious part. Very serious part. If you guys don't like, comment, and more importantly, subscribe, YouTube will come through that door right there. Stop it. That door, and they will. Jewish Denominations Explained.
Hi, this is Matt Baker. Recently, I finished an 8-part series on the family tree of Christian denominations.
Yes, you did.
As you might know, I'm actually Jewish, and therefore several people have asked me to do a similar tree for Jewish denominations. Now, the concept of denominations doesn't really carry over perfectly from Christianity to Judaism. But despite this, I think I can make it work, so long as you understand that I'm using the term a bit loosely. So in this video, I'm going to show you the family tree of Jewish denominations. It's going to be a single episode, so also take note that I'll be mostly focusing on the present and on the United States. But first, I want to shout out Dr. Henry Abramson, who has a wonderful YouTube channel that goes much deeper into Jewish history and thought. He provided me with some great feedback for this episode, so I want to say thank you to him.
Guys, let's try to get this video up to, let's say this is the first one for the Jewish denominations. In the first video I'm doing about the Jewish people here. Let's get this up to 10 likes, guys. And also recommend any video I should do on Jewish history, maybe like a lecture, anything of the, Jewish history lecture that sounds interesting. I'll be honest. Somebody in there recommend me another video. I'll try to make sure to get that one done as well. So the ball's in your court, guys.
As well as to several Useful Charts viewers who gave feedback as well.
I love his intro. It's a good
Okay,
intro.
let me now explain some important differences between Judaism and Christianity. One of the things that drives Jews crazy is that Christians tend to assume that they already know lots about Judaism because they've read the Old Testament. I've even had...
Here's where I am coming into play. I separate myself because I know absolutely nothing about them. I don't know about Jewish history, and I have read the Old Testament. You know what? It seemed interesting. I liked it. I like it, but I feel like it's more than just that. I feel like there's more to them. I'm sorry, more to Jewish people than just what I've read in my Bible.
Had many Christians tell me
That was the King James Bible at that. So it probably wasn't even like the most accurate Bible in the world, guys.
that I'm not a real Jew because I don't match their expectations of what a real Jew is. You see, most Christians, as well as most former Christians, have only ever viewed the Old Testament through a Christian lens. And therefore, they assume that Judaism basically uses the same framework that Christianity does, but that it simply does so without Jesus, which is not actually how Judaism works. So I'm going to start by explaining some basic differences between these two religions that you might not be aware of. The first thing you need to know is that Christianity is much more concerned with the question, what should a person believe? When choosing whether or not to join a church, most Christians, especially Protestants, will first of all ask, what does that church believe? Which is why almost every church website always includes a section called Statement of Faith. It's also why the ancient church developed creeds, such as the Nicene Creed, in order to make a list of what a Christian needs to believe in order to be considered a Christian. And of course, the most important thing that a Christian needs to believe is that Jesus was God and that he died for our sins. For example, the famous scripture, John 3:16, says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." So obviously,
I'm familiar with that one. I have heard that one before, guys. And yeah, it is kind of like one of those things where if I'm learning about a new group or anything, like, I guess that is the part of me where I'm like, okay, what do they immediately believe in? But I would assume that's kind of a normal thing to ask. But again, that's just look at me coming over here with the Christianity and a Christian perspective on here. I'm thinking this is a normal question to ask about a religious practice or a group or anything. So school me.
belief is a key part of what it means to be a Christian. But this is not exactly true for Judaism, nor is it exactly true for most other religions. Most religions are more concerned with what should a person do. So, for example, for many modern-day Jews,
That's a good one. That's a good one. You got me there. Okay. I was like, this is a good question. This is also a really, really, really good question, guys. Okay. He got me mind blown.
it's far less important that you believe that Moses was a historical person than it is that you follow the Jewish traditions that are said to go back to him. So, for example, when I converted to Judaism, which in my case was a year-long process, at no point was I asked to agree to a certain list of beliefs. Instead, I was taught mostly about Jewish practices and traditions, as well as a lot about the history and language of the Jewish people. The other thing that Christianity is very much concerned with is salvation. The whole thing hinges on the question, what must a person do or believe in order to be saved? So the assumption that most Christians make about Judaism is that Jews are also concerned with salvation, and that Jews simply have a different way of obtaining it. The further assumption, based mostly on the writings of Paul, is that Jews try to obtain salvation by obeying Jewish law. But that's simply not true, because there is no such thing as original sin in Judaism, nor is there much of a focus on the exact details surrounding the afterlife. To put it simply, Jews do not follow Jewish law in order to be saved from some future punishment or in order to gain some future reward. For some Jews, they followed the law simply because God told them to. For others, it's because we believe that many of those laws, which we call mitzvot, serve a purpose in the here and now. The best way that I can explain this is by giving the following analogy.
Before he gives this analogy, I just want to say that I think this is actually a good, focus here because, okay, this is just from me speaking, so I'm sure people in the comments will completely say either I am, wrong here or some people may agree with me. Who knows? Probably not. It's just me. But yeah, it kind of feels like when the goal is salvation, it just feels a little bit more like, I guess, like you're not doing it for the sake of doing it. You're doing it for a purpose at the end of the day. While in this one here, where you're focusing on the here and now, is what they're saying, more of a focus. It really feels like, okay, it's like a parent. Like, you don't have to ask your parent why you need to follow every rule that they give you. As a child, you just kind of follow the rule. God is like all of our father, mother, father, however you see it in your eyes. But like, once they give you a command, I guess you just blindly following that command would be like just the more like would probably be the better way to go about it, versus asking like, okay, well, what's in it for me if I follow these goals? Even though obviously I'm not saying that's not a blanket statement. I'm not saying Christians are just out here with selfish goals or anything, but like the ideas he's throwing out there can lead to those type of behaviors is more what I'm saying. So like, not necessarily that people are selfish or that is a selfish goal or is selfish behaviors, but it feels like it leans more into kind of those type of mentalities, if you know what I mean. And again, who am I'm just a guy on YouTube, people. So like, remember, it's just how I'm feeling in the moment. I'm listening to this information and I'm taking it. I'm vocalizing how I feel. That's how YouTube works. Okay, this is going on too long.
In our modern society, we have many traffic laws that are designed to keep everyone safe. If you break one of those laws, say by going too fast in your car, you might get a ticket as a punishment. But do you obey the traffic rules simply because you don't want a ticket? Perhaps, but I hope that you also obey them because, for example, you don't want to hit some kid while passing through a school zone. Likewise, one of the Jewish mitzvot is to rest on Shabbat, or Saturday. We do this not because we're scared that God will punish us if we don't, but because we see a benefit in taking some time off at least once per week. Now, as you probably know, different Jews take a different approach to how carefully they follow this mitzvah, and I'll get to that in a moment. But for now, please understand that for all Jews, no matter what denomination they belong to, what they do or don't do is not based on trying to earn a future reward. This is summed up by the following principle given by the early Pharisee Antigonus of Soko. Be not like servants who serve their master for the sake of reward. Rather, be like servants who do not serve their master for the sake of reward, and let the awe of heaven be upon you. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Christians are not at all concerned with what they do. Of course they are. But in Christianity, belief always comes first, followed by a changed life. And I'm also not saying that there are absolutely no beliefs in Judaism. For some Jews, their only creed is the Shema prayer. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. For others, especially the Orthodox, there are the 13 Principles of Faith by Maimonides. My point, though, is that generally speaking, Christians put a stronger emphasis on believing, and Jews put a stronger emphasis on doing. So with that under our belts, Let's now look at the family tree. As I mentioned in episode 1 of the Christian Denominations series, Judaism has its roots in ancient Israelite religion, which was practiced by the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. Israel and Judah were relatively small kingdoms, but they...
Wait, is one of them Zoroastrianism? Because I have looked that up before, and it is like one of the... Like, it is definitely something I want to look up or do more on. I'm sure I'll have a video on that sooner or later. I feel like I should definitely do the Jewish denominations first and, kind of get like more Jewish topics, done now. And then follow that up with like the like Muslim and or Islam. So, and then maybe go back to Zoroastrianism and then maybe go through some like different type of religions, things like that. So Hinduism, Buddhism, just kind of all the different things there, kind of what is it, Sikhism? I want to know more about all this stuff. So recommend it to me, guys, in the comments. But also let me know if I was right about the Zoroastrianism thing. Oh, I'm looking at the page now. Scratch that, guys. I see it here. Sorry, guys. I should have been reacting harder.
They happen to be located right in between two of the most important centers of civilization in the ancient world, Egypt and Mesopotamia, which is why Egypt and then later Assyria and Babylon played such a huge role in their history. Now, there are two main explanations for where ancient Israelite religion came from. One, of course, is that it came directly from God through divine revelation, specifically when Moses received the Torah. The other is that it developed slowly over time based on its interactions with...
Random, but the name of the hospital I was born in was Mount Sinai. Shout outs to me.
The other is that it developed slowly over time based on its interactions with both Egypt and Mesopotamia. In fact, the scholarly consensus nowadays is that the Israelites actually started out as a subset of Canaanites and then slowly went from polytheism to monotheism over time. Either way, what we're concerned with here is what happened during the late Iron Age. Basically, Israel fell to the Assyrians and Judah fell to the Babylonians. But then following a brief exile in Babylon, the former inhabitants of Judah, now called Jews, were able to return to their land and rebuild their temple, which is why Judaism between 537 BCE and 70 CE is known as Second Temple Judaism. During this time, it was influenced by both Zoroastrianism, which was the religion of the Persians, as well as by Hellenism, which was the religion of the Greeks. But most importantly, by this point, Judaism was definitely monotheistic, which is to this day its defining feature. However, by the time that the Romans took over, there were four major sects within Second Temple Judaism. The Pharisees, who represented the everyday people. The
Pharisees are the ones that are still around today. Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I'm just now looking at the chart again. Obviously, the other ones lead to extinct. I'm just throwing it out there. The Pharisees are the ones that are more like the modern day Jews, as far as I'm aware.
Essenes, who were a mystical bunch. The Zealots, who wanted to fight against the Romans. And the Sadducees, who were the elites who ran the temple. To this was added a fifth group, the early Christians. However, Christianity quickly became a separate, mostly Gentile, meaning non-Jewish religion. The early Christians who continued to maintain Jewish traditions, such as the Ebionites and Nazarenes, eventually went extinct, although there is evidence that they had an influence on the development of Islam before doing so.
Nice.
Anyway, the Essenes, Zealots, and Sadducees also all went extinct back when the Romans destroyed the Jewish temple in 70 CE. Thus, the only sect of Second Temple Judaism that survived was that of the Pharisees. Now, the New Testament does not have a lot of nice things to say about the Pharisees.
No,
but for Jews today, the Pharisees are actually our spiritual ancestors.
Yeah.
After the destruction...
I will say, maybe it's just because I grew up in more of a Christian household. The word Pharisees doesn't sound the best, I will say. I don't know. I'm sure it has a better meaning than what I associate it with. But when I hear it, it just sounds like, I guess the only thing I have reference to would be when what was it like? Wasn't the Pharisees that killed, kind of told the Romans about Jesus, or paid off, you guys know who I'm talking about.
Of Jerusalem, they set up a school in the nearby town of Yavne, known in Christian sources as Jamnia, which is where they helped Judaism evolve from being a temple-based religion to one that is based mostly on communal prayer and on studying the 5 books of Moses. known as the Torah. The scholars at this Yavne school eventually became known as rabbis. Thus, Judaism, as it exists today, can more accurately be called Rabbinic Judaism, in order to distinguish it from the earlier Second Temple Judaism. One of the things that the early rabbis did was to develop the Talmud, which actually has two components: the Mishnah, which was written first, and the Gemara, which was written later and consists of commentary on the Mishnah. According to tradition, the Mishnah is based on the oral Torah, which consisted of various clarifications that were given to Moses around the same time as the written Torah. These were supposedly passed down by word of mouth until the time of the rabbis. However, according to modern critical scholarship, the oral Torah likely does not go all the way back to Moses. But it does at least go back to the Second Temple period, to figures like Hillel and Shammai, who lived just prior to the time of Jesus. If you want to learn more about the various rabbis mentioned in the Mishnah, we actually have a video on that, which I'll link to in the description. Hey. Now, in case you've heard...
Guys, should I do it? Should I do it? Throw it in the comments. Should I do it?
Some of the nasty things that sometimes get said about the Talmud, let me make it clear that in those cases, the Talmud is usually being taken out of context for anti-Semitic reasons. Rather than being a list of clear-cut rules, the Talmud and the various notes that now come with it are more like a collection of case law, in which various opinions are given in addition to opinions about those opinions. And then opinions about the opinions about the opinions, which is why a typical Talmud page looks something like this. Now, it's at this point that I should bring up the Karaite Jews. Karaite Jews reject the Talmud, and therefore some people claim that the modern Karaites can trace their lineage all the way back to the Sadducees. But what's more likely is that they were simply a group that broke away from mainstream Rabbinic Judaism around the year 800. An even earlier group to break away from, or at least lose contact with, Rabbinic Judaism is Beta Israel, based in Ethiopia. They may go all the way back to Second Temple times, but there is also evidence that they initially maintained some contact with the early rabbis, but then for some reason that contact was eventually severed. It wasn't actually until modern times that Beta Israel was quote-unquote rediscovered and integrated back into mainstream Judaism. So again, I wouldn't consider Beta Israel to be outside of Rabbinic Judaism, but rather to be a unique stream within it. But then...
That's a very controversial one, I'll say that, because, you ask people like Kyrie about their thoughts on that. They're probably going to say Beta Israel is more like Alpha Israel, if you know what I mean.
There's the Samaritans, who definitely are a separate group from Rabbinic Jews. They claim to be the descendants of the northern 10 tribes of Israel. However, according to historians, the situation is much more complicated. When Assyria conquered Israel, some Israelites were carried away, and then non-Israelites were brought in to replace them. However, other Israelites simply moved south to Jerusalem, where they became integrated into the kingdom of Judah. Then, when the Babylonians conquered Judah, a split occurred whereby many of the elites were carried off to Babylon, whereas the everyday people were left behind, where they sometimes intermarried with foreigners. When the Judean elites returned to rebuild the Jerusalem temple, some of those who had been left behind, who the Bible calls the people of the land, wanted to build a separate temple, which they did at Mount Gerizim, which happened to be in the territory where the northern tribes used to live. So to me, it's unclear whether the Samaritan Jewish division was more about an ethnic division or a class division. Either way, what we do know is that the Samaritans eventually dwindled in size, and today consist of just around 850 people. Okay, so let's...
Oh, wow. That's not a lot of people. How do you really even know if you're one of the originals? But, I mean, I guess if you're, like, part of, like, one of those 800 people's family, you're like, no, I know for sure that I'm a Samaritan. But yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, based off what he's saying and based off of, kind of like what their history shows, it's reasonable to believe that they did come from the kingdom of Israel, uh, like either during or before the Assyrian takeover, and then maybe some of them maybe possibly went to Judah, and then some of them possibly, or just like they went there, then kind of some time went by, they were there, they always thought about going back to Israel, but they were just at Judah for a while, and then that got taken over, and then they had to go and kind of do their own thing again, because now it's like a whole class thing. So it probably is multiple things. There probably is a mix between the class and the fact that they were from there. It could actually be like a really, because like multiple things can be true in one. So like the more likely thing is that both things happen, in my opinion. Like, yeah, everyone started off there, they got attacked. Some people got moved over here, some people got moved over there. These people clearly still felt like the original Israel was their original home. That's why they tried to, went back. It all makes sense when you really think about it.
Let's now look at how the main branch of Rabbinic Judaism evolved. Generally speaking, from 70 CE to around 1740 CE, there was nothing within Judaism that was anything like what the word denomination refers to. There was simply Judaism. This is partly because Jews were very much the minority wherever they were found. So when you're already a small persecuted group, you tend to stick together. However, it also boils down to the fact that Judaism, to this day, has no central leadership. If you're looking for an analogy from within the Christian framework, it would be best to say that Jews follow a congregational style of governance, sort of like the Baptists. Rabbis get trained at rabbinical colleges, where some rabbis end up being more influential than others. But then each congregation gets to choose who they want to be their rabbi and how they want to run things. Although note that nowadays, some countries do have what's called a chief rabbi, which I'll get to later. Now, don't get me wrong. When I say that there was just one Judaism until 1740, I'm not saying that there were absolutely no differences to be found. There were, which brings me to the terms Sephardi, Ashkenazi, and Mizrahi. But please note, these are not different denominations. They are more like regional subcultures.
Yeah, they're kind of like, I've heard of Ashkenazi before, and I feel like I've heard of Mizrahi before. The Sephardi one, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. That one I'm not familiar with. I haven't heard of that one before. But that one actually is, I like color green, so it's already got me intrigued.
Explain, let's bring up a map. Basically, following the fall of Jerusalem, Jews ended up all over the Roman Empire. One particular area where a lot of them ended up is in what we today call Spain and Portugal. Jews from this area became known as Sephardic Jews, Sepharad simply being the Hebrew word for Spain. For many centuries, they were ruled by Muslims, who generally treated them very well. However, following the Reconquista and the shift back to Christian control, Jews were expelled from the Iberian Peninsula, and thus many of them ended up back in the Middle East, where they were welcomed by the Ottoman Empire. Others ended up in North Africa, or in the Low Countries, or in the so-called New World, where they settled long before the arrival of the now more dominant Ashkenazi Jews. The word Ashkenazi comes from the name Ashkenaz, which was a very old Jewish name for Germany. Based on recent DNA studies, we now know a lot about the origins of the Ashkenazi Jews. It's now thought that they originated in southern Italy, before next settling in Germany around the year 800. At some point, though, their numbers dwindled to around just 350 people, which led to what's called a genetic bottleneck. Before this point, there was a good deal of intermarriage with non-Jews, particularly Southern Italians. But then, after this point, the group mostly intermarried amongst themselves, resulting in the creation of a distinct ethnic group called Ashkenazi Jewish, which has clear DNA markers that can show up on a DNA test. But take note, even though Ashkenazi Jews are at least partially European, a good amount of their DNA can still be traced all the way back to the Middle East, particularly along the male-only line. So the old theory that the Ashkenazi are somehow fake Jews descended from the Khazars, who merely converted to Judaism, is now known to be false. I should also note that while the Ashkenazi Jews originally settled in Germany, most of them ended up being pushed into Eastern Europe, which is where most of them lived until the 20th century. Okay, so in addition to...
Now, okay, so as far as like their origins in like southern Italy, I'm sure that may have had something to do with the Roman Empire, right? Like that's just like the Roman Empire was just so popular, and if you're already part of the Roman Empire, why not go to Rome? Hey, you're already part of the empire. Your place got taken over. You are you are like now a citizen now. And I know they used to do things like that. And then maybe after, the Romans kind of took over a little bit more up north, I know at one point they kind of did, claim areas up there. Maybe that's where they started to go after that. And then they kind of just congregated together and, like you said, started intermingling so much that they created their own genetic markers. Shout outs to those guys, You did something, and now people know from history that you guys were banging.
Sephardic Jews and Ashkenazi Jews, there are also Mizrahi Jews, which is sort of a catch-all term for Jews that never left the Middle East. Mizrahi Jews ended up assimilating a lot of Sephardic customs, though, because remember, many Sephardic Jews ended up back in the Middle East. So take note that nowadays, the Mizrahis are often lumped together with the Sephardi Jews. But again, before I move on...
Not in my eyes. I see the differences. Trust me. If a Sephardic Jew right now came up to me, and then a Mizrahi Jew came up to me right now, I'd be like, yo, I know you guys. I'm not going to confuse you. I'm here. I'm here with it. Ashkenazi come over here. I'm like, yo, I know all three of you guys. What's up?
And I want to emphasize that the Sephardi versus Ashkenazi division has nothing to do with denominations, nor with any theological differences. In Judaism, we have a concept called minhag, which can be roughly translated as customs. Sephardi Jews and Ashkenazi Jews may have different minhag, but they share the same religion. The best analogy from within the Christian framework would be to compare Catholics who use the Latin Rite with those who use the Syriac Rite. Their clothing and liturgy might be different, but their theology is not. To this day, Ashkenazi Jews rely heavily on philosophical works developed by Sephardi Jews, and vice versa. One good example is Maimonides, who I mentioned earlier as being the one who developed the 13 Principles of Faith. He was Sephardi, but he's just as important to Ashkenazis. In contrast, there's Rashi, whose commentaries are included in all modern editions of the Talmud. He was Ashkenazi, but he is also considered authoritative by Sephardi. Now, before I move on to the modern denominations of Judaism, I want to point out a book called the Shulchan Aruch. Written in 1565 by the Sephardic rabbi Joseph Caro, it also contains notes by the Ashkenazi rabbi Moses Isserles. To this day, it's kind of the authoritative text for all things related to Jewish law. But it's important to note that it is used by both Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardi Jews, although when it comes to minhag or customs, Ashkenazis follow the rulings of Rabbi Isserles, whereas Sephardis follow the rulings of Rabbi Caro. Okay, so like I say, from 70 CE to around...
Just follow both rules, guy. I don't know. I'm not going to tell people how to follow rules.
1740 CE, there was pretty much just one Judaism, albeit with different customs depending on where you lived. But from 1740 onwards, this changed. Nowadays, it's said that Judaism, particularly in Western countries, has three main branches: Reform,
Okay.
Conservative, and Orthodox. So before we continue down the tree, I want to
I feel like I've heard of Reformed Jewish people before. I feel like Reformed is more like the like kind of like comedian. Your normal everyday Jewish people you probably wouldn't even know were Jewish until they told you they were Jewish. I feel like conservative Jewish would be like your who's like a conservative Jewish person. I mean, I'm sure it's not conservative, like politically conservative. I'm sure it's more like in the, like religiously conservative. I don't know, like, because I'm thinking of Ben Shapiro, but I'm like, he's more like conservative as far as like the politically conservative, and that's American politically conservative. I don't know how like like Jewish conservative Ben Shapiro is. Like, I don't know. He might be really conservative. Orthodox is what I imagine, like, I guess in my mind, like the Hasidic Jews, like the people who like, they have the little, I don't know what the thing is called on the sides, like the little hair loop. Somebody in the comments, let me know what the hair loop is called. That might actually be really cool information to know. But I feel like it would be more like them, like they would be more like the Orthodox Jewish people. So let's see if I'm right, guys. I believe I am, but let's find out.
to explain the main differences between these three branches, or as I'm calling them here, denominations. At the end of the day, the difference boils down to just one thing, and one thing only: their approach to Jewish law, which is called halacha. Orthodox Jews see halacha as being binding and, for the most part, unchanging. Binding means you have to follow it, not in order to obtain salvation, but simply because God says so. So Orthodox Jews follow the law very carefully.
That makes sense. You do it because he told you to. That's it. Just do it. You can't change. You can't get out of it. You just do it because he told you to.
In the same way that it's been followed for over 2,000 years. In contrast, conservative Jews, known as Masorti Jews outside of North America, see halacha as being binding, but not unchanging. In other words, the law should evolve over time in order to keep up with how human society has evolved. So, for example, Orthodox Jews won't drive a car on Shabbat because both combustion engines and electric engines involve lighting a fire. And in the Torah, lighting a fire is considered work, and you're not supposed to work on Shabbat. However, conservative Jews have come to the conclusion that in our modern world, being able to attend synagogues, which are often no longer within walking distance, is more important than following the original rule. So conservative rabbis have actually changed Jewish law to say that driving a car on Shabbat is permitted for this special circumstance.
Now, guys, can you guys watch YouTube chat, during the, like on that day? Can you watch YouTube? Like if it's firing up a computer? Because that's like technology. I mean, it's like, is there any combustion going on there? I mean, I don't know. Technically, your computer is running. It's got things going on there. There's some circuitry, happening. I don't know how like electronics count into that. I guess technically there's no like actual fire happening, but it is also plugged into my power source, which, I don't know what my power company is using. They're most likely not using solar power. They're using some type of power that's being generated somehow, and I'm sure that involves fire at one point. So like, I don't know. Let me know. Can you guys use the internet? Can you guys use your computers? Inform me. I want to hear from some Orthodox people, but also conservatives. Let me know.
They have done similar things in terms of allowing women to become rabbis and supporting LGBT rights. Now, before I move on, let me mention the principle of pikuach nefesh, which is followed by every branch of Judaism. This law states that any other law can be broken in order to protect the life or health of a person. So, for example, if a person has a medical emergency on Shabbat, even the most Orthodox Jew will drive a car in order to get that person to the hospital as fast as possible. However, there are 3 exceptions. You can't murder, you can't worship idols, and you can't commit a sexual sin. Okay, so finally there are
That makes sense. And shout outs to them for including the no sexual sins, because I don't think that's included in the laws for your 10 commandments for the Bible. I'm pretty sure that's not, but again, I'm sure there's going to be some Christians watching this as well. Update me, keep me informed. I'm pretty sure it's not, but let me know.
Reform Jews. Reform Jews see halacha as being neither binding nor unchanging. This means that each individual Jew can make up their own mind about how to follow Jewish law. So, for example, the Torah says that Jews must not eat certain shellfish, such as prawns, but it says that beef is okay. However, in today's world, due to climate change, it can be argued that eating beef is more problematic than eating prawns. So some Reform Jews might decide to adopt a full pescatarian diet for ethical reasons instead of following traditional kosher rules.
You know what? I gotta say, I don't like seafood. So I'm very, this is appealing to me pretty well. Shout outs. I'm looking conservative conservative Judaism. Not looking too bad, guys. You're looking kind of nice over there, conservative Jew.
A lot of Reform Jews like to focus on the phrase tikkun olam, which means repairing the world. And therefore, they tend to prioritize ethical mitzvot over ritual mitzvot. Now, these may seem like some pretty big differences, but surprisingly, on the surface, these 3 groups can often look almost the same. The one exception to this is a subset of Orthodox Jews known as Haredi, or ultra-Orthodox. Although, note that the term ultra-Orthodox is usually considered offensive. Haredi Jews can be broken down further.
I was going to say, I want to immediately start saying, ultra, but now that I hear that it is offensive, I can see how it is offensive, like how people can use it in a derogatory way, easily. But it is a cool name a little bit, it is also easy to make fun of. So I get why you guys probably wouldn't want to hear it. Obviously, what did he say? Haredi? That's probably a better word. It probably is. But ultra Orthodox sounds, like you guys got powers or something.
Into Hasidic and non-Hasidic. I'll explain Hasidic Judaism in more detail in a moment. But for now, note that these are the Jews that tend to be Jewish in very visible ways. They are the ones with big black hats and long side curls. Many Christians, when forming a mental picture of what a Jew looks like, will tend to think of a Hasidic Jew. Well, I just want to caution you against that stereotype, because that would be like a Jew assuming that all Christians look like this. Even among Orthodox Jews, there are many who don't really stand out as being Jewish in a highly visible way and are more integrated into the greater society. These non-Haredi Orthodox Jews are usually called modern Orthodox. Okay, so how did all these various denominations of modern Judaism come about? Well, let's actually start with Hasidism. It was founded by the Baal Shem Tov, who lived in what is today Ukraine during the 1700s, which is why I've shown the Hasidic movement as stemming from the Ashkenazis. However, take note that nowadays some Sephardis have also adopted Hasidism. What a lot of non-Jews don't realize about Hasidism is that it is actually a very mystical version of Judaism, in addition to being outwardly quite conservative. It relies heavily on Kabbalah, which is a mystical school of thought within Judaism that goes back to Isaac Luria in the 1500s. And
it's funny he says it's the more mystical one, because for some reason I always personally associated I always felt like Hasidic Jews were very similar to Orthodox Christians, and obviously it's probably not it's probably more like a regional thing where Eastern Orthodox Christians just kind of have that more kind of have that look to them, with their fashion and everything. But also Hasidic Jews also kind of have not the same look, but it could be a similar kind of look, You know, as far as like, I'm thinking of like the pastor of like the Hasidic, you know, or the of the like Eastern Orthodox Church versus like the, I guess, average Hasidic Jewish person. I don't know. I'm probably saying some random stuff in my head, but like that connection has always been like there for me, and it's more likely just a regional thing.
And Moses de Leon in the 1200s, and perhaps even further. The other thing you need to know about Hasidism is that each Hasidic group is centered around a single rabbinic dynasty that can be traced back to a specific Eastern European village. So take, for example, Chabad, which is one of the largest and most well-known Hasidic groups. It was originally based in a Russian village called Lubavitch, which is why followers of Chabad are also known as Lubavitchers. The famous 20th century leader of this group,
You guys couldn't think of a better name?
Mendel Schneerson, was a descendant of Schneer Zalman, the founder of Chabad. However, not all Ashkenazi Jews embraced Hasidism. Those who did not became known as mitnagdim, meaning opponents, although they would later become known as Litvaks, because a lot of
I was going to say, I don't like that terminology. Like, you're just immediately calling them the opponents? Like, come on, guys.
them were based in Lithuania. Around the year 1770, another major event occurred, mostly among the mitnagdim, known as the Haskalah, or Jewish Enlightenment. It stemmed from and was very similar to the general age of enlightenment that had occurred in Europe about a century earlier. Basically, it led to Judaism being re-examined using the lens of modern critical scholarship. But it was not all simply about new ideas. It was also about new freedoms. Around the same time as the Haskalah, Jewish emancipation was achieved throughout most of Europe, meaning that for the first time, Jews were given the same legal rights as Christians. At this point,
Hey, shout outs to France for doing it first. Low countries, I don't know what that technically means, but I'm sure that sounds like a pretty widespread area. They say countries, that's a lot of people. You know, come on, Sweden. Come on, Sweden. What was up? Come on, you had so many years. You know, you had almost 100 years between France and you guys doing it. What's going on here, Sweden?
some Jews simply became secular, whereas other Jews, particularly in Germany, sought to reform Judaism in order to bring it up to speed with what had been learned through science and textual criticism. Now, for the next little while, I'm going to be talking exclusively about the United States. That's because, other than Israel, this is where most of the world's Jews currently live. But don't worry, once I'm done, I will be talking about Israel and other countries as well. Note that it's mostly in the US and in some similar countries like Canada and the UK that Judaism can be divided into various denominations. So let's start with the migration of German Jews to the US between 1840 and 1860. Prior to this point, most Jews in America had actually been Sephardic.
Guys, most Jews in America had actually been Sephardic before this point. But you already know where my head's at. If anybody's familiar with this channel, you already know what time it is, guys. It's time to judge these symbols here, because these are some interesting symbols, and my mind is already going there. So let's hit it, guys. It's gonna be a very similar criteria to how I judge the Christian ones, but this one is going to be a little bit different. Obviously, this is Jewish denominations here, so we got to take that into account. We're not going to count this U.S. flag here because I'm pretty sure that is not one of them. So we'll go ahead and start off with the Union of American Hebrew Congregations. Right. So I like this one. I like this one because it's not like, okay, it doesn't immediately hit with like Judaism, like without seeing the wording, but the moment you associate the name with the logo, you're like, this is definitely Jewish. I see what they're going for here, and I like it. Like, you know, this is a good logo here. This is top tier. This is a nice one. Now, this one immediately caught my eye. So you guys know I'm loving this one here already. Like off rip, this is number one in my book. United Synagogue of America. Um, you guys got it. You guys, shout outs to you guys. I like this one. I'm loving this one. Orthodox Union. Let's see. This is where I'm sorry guys, this is where the ball starts to drop. Now, again, if you're new to the channel, this isn't like a derogatory thing. I'm not saying this in a negative way. Like your group is still incredible. I'm just giving my opinions on the logos. Maybe you guys need to, just reanalyze this a little bit. Orthodox Union, you know, it's not really hitting for me right now. It's the O, the U, I've seen better OUs. Obviously I'm from Ohio, so there's the Ohio University logo. It's a little bit more original with the O. Like this is an original OU, but like the U is clear. The O, it takes a second before you even realize that's an O. Some people may immediately think that's an N. It could be NU incredibly easily. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it, and also it doesn't scream Judaism to me. Like, sorry, I'm not the biggest Jewish person in the world. I'm actually not Jewish, believe it or not. But if I was, I'd be looking at it. I'd be telling you guys like, hey, we should do something about this. Aguda, I'm sure I'm saying that horribly, by the way. But let's see. Okay, I see what this is happening here. I see what's happening here. So, okay, I like this one. Okay, this is a good one because look at in the back. You got the stone tablets there, and it may not be like the easiest to tell from like, but then once you actually look at it and you're like paying attention, you're like, okay, I see what you're doing there. In the earth, the Americas. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. It's still, for me, it's top 3 out of the 4 I've seen. It's number 3. Let's see, the Shabbat. So immediately I don't know what this is. I will say that it almost, and guys, you don't come at me for this, but it almost looks like a seal. If you look at this is like the head of the seal. This is like the fin right here. That's the immediate thing I'm getting, or like some type of shiny Pokemon. But it is an interesting logo. Is it supposed to be fire? I'm imagining this is supposed to be fire. Like I feel like if this is fire, they should probably have a better, like a red going in there, or some type of like flame color. Like a mix of colors, that would be nice. Like if it was like more than just this one color. If you're gonna represent fire, you can have the yellowish and the orange, and then go into being the red or maybe some blue up there. All right, so Alliance for Jewish Renewal. Again, this is gonna go to some of my comments for a lot of the Christian ones. This feels very rec centery or like art museum, this is like, it feels more like a place that you guys go and your kids have a good time. You put them there, they have a little art program, the younger ones are like coloring and stuff, but then they have a gym, so like your teenagers are like playing basketball and stuff like that, like super fun stuff. The Jewish kids are having the best time here. I don't know how much learning the parents are doing here. Reconstructing Judaism. Okay. I'm not getting too much of anything out of this. This, again, I'm sorry. This is another one of the, again, and if you watch the Christian videos, you see I mention this a lot. This feels a little bit more like a hospital logo. This feels like a place that, you scratch your knee, you go here, they fix you up. It's like, it's a good spot. They got really good stuff there. If you're hurt, they'll fix you up to get you out of there. It's not a long line, but it is a hospital. That's the logo I'm getting here. That's the look I'm getting from the logo, guys. is that this is a really well-established hospital in an area. So people know about this hospital. So they're looking at the hospital like, yo, if you're hurt, go to this hospital. Like, but again, this looks like a hospital logo. So shout outs to this hospital. It's not a hospital. I'm sorry, guys. Again, take everything I'm saying with a little grain of salt, except for you guys here, United Synagogue of America. Take everything I'm saying 100% real, because your logo is awesome, guys. I actually love this logo.
But pretty soon, most Jewish congregations were not only Ashkenazi, but they were also leaning towards reform. So in 1873, the Union of American Hebrew Congregations was established in order to serve as the main organization for American Jews. This was followed by the founding of Hebrew Union College in 1875 as the main rabbinical school. However, while most American Jews were Reform at this point, some were not. Therefore, in 1886, some more conservative-leaning rabbis broke away from Hebrew Union College and established instead the Jewish Theological Seminary. Although, please note that these so-called conservative Jews were only conservative in comparison to Reform Jews. In the eyes of many Eastern European Jews, these so-called conservatives were actually quite liberal. What happened next?
This is very similar path to the Christians. Like, I'm sorry, guys. This is just what I said. You always got the more conservative leaning. First, you have the liberal ones, and then you get the conservative ones who are like, nah, you guys are too liberal. We're breaking apart. And then there's another group that's going to be like, you know what? Those guys were too conservative, or like they still weren't conservative enough. So we're going to go over here and be even more conservative. And then there's the group that was like, you know what? We're too conservative for you guys, but we're too liberal for you guys. So we're going to do our own thing. It's the funniest thing. It's going to happen all the time, right? I wonder if that's going to happen with, the Islamic groups.
Was that many of those Eastern European Jews ended up migrating to the U.S. between 1880 to 1925 due to persecution in Russia. They were even more conservative than the conservatives and thus became known as Orthodox. Therefore, we ended up with three main denominations or branches within American Judaism. The Union of American Hebrew Congregations ended up being the main organization for Reform Jews, eventually changing its name to the Union for Reform Judaism. The United Synagogue of America, established in 1913, became the main organization for conservative Jews, although it too later changed its name to the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism. Finally, the
Guys, you had it with the logo. Why did you change the name? It sounds way more complicated now. Like, I hope USCJ isn't even a better, what do they call that? Like, anagram or whatever for it. It's like, come on, guys. You had it in the bag there.
Orthodox Union, established in 1898, became the main organization for modern Orthodox Jews. Now, even if you've never heard of any of these organizations, you've probably seen this symbol on various food packages. It means that the Orthodox Union has deemed that item to be kosher. I also want to point out
Whoa, guys, you guys been making sure my food's been good the whole time. Shout out to you guys. I'm bumping your logo up, guys. For that, your logo is now officially number 6.
Which is another Orthodox organization, separate from the Orthodox Union. It consists mostly of Haredi congregations, both non-Hasidic and Hasidic, although notably Chabad is not a member. Altogether, among those who attend synagogue in the U.S., approximately 50% are Reform, around 30% are Conservative, and 20% are Orthodox. Wow. I should also point out Reconstructionist, or Reconstructing Judaism, which can be considered a fourth branch of modern Judaism. Founded by Mordecai Kaplan in the 1950s, it can be seen as a breakaway from conservative Judaism. However, like Reform Judaism, It does not see Jewish law as being binding. But in contrast to Reform Judaism, it tends to place more value on preserving old traditions and on maintaining a very distinct Jewish identity. So you can kind of think of Reconstructionist Judaism as being somewhat conservative on the outside, but very liberal on the inside. There's also Renewal Judaism, which is even more recent, having its roots in the countercultural movement of the 1960s and 70s. It too is a very liberal branch of Judaism, but tends to incorporate more mystical elements from Hasidic Judaism, which is why
Sounds about right for 1985. It felt like in the 80s, some Jewish people were just like, you know what? Yeah, we're doing our own thing here. We're going cooler with it. I'm not saying the other ones aren't super cool, but this one definitely, like, I'll be honest, this one sounds cool. This one sounds cool. Just for that, it's getting bumped up. You are now this logo is number 6.
why its
No. It's number 5.
followers are sometimes nicknamed hippie Jews. Now, one other thing I should make clear is that in Judaism, denominational lines can be quite blurry, especially in areas where there aren't many Jews. So, for example, I live in Canada, and when I converted to Judaism, I did so through a Reform synagogue, although one of the teachers was a Reconstructionist. However, after 1 year of study and the approval of a Beit Din, I had a Hatafat Dam Brit performed by an Orthodox rabbi and was immersed in a mikveh at the Orthodox synagogue. On top of this, the synagogue that my wife and I are most likely to attend, simply because it's the closest one to our home, is actually Renewal. So when people ask me which branch of Judaism I belong to, it's a difficult question to answer. I usually just say that I'm a progressive Jew, which basically encompasses everything other than Orthodox, and in North America at least, is the dominant type of Judaism. But even between progressive Jews and Orthodox Jews, there is often a lot of mixing. While each set of rabbis might hold very different views, the actual members might not. So it's not unusual for a Jew with Reform leanings to attend an Orthodox synagogue, or a fully observant Orthodox Jew to attend a Reform synagogue. And then, of course, there are sometimes separate Sephardi congregations. They usually see themselves as being outside of the whole Reform, Conservative, Orthodox trichotomy. But then there's also individual Sephardic Jews who do see themselves as belonging to one of the 3 streams. So it's complicated. There are even humanist Jews who do not even believe in God, but still gather to celebrate certain holidays or rites of passage.
Okay, so they threw this one at me, guys. I was just about to go on my part and just say I kind of enjoyed this one. Like, I like how they're integrating into everyone else's denomination. I'll quotate that one. But it's more just like, hey, you may have a specific like viewpoint here, but like at the end of the day, we're all Jews. I can come to yours, you can come to mine. Do they call them temples? Like, they're places where we can all congregate because we are all one at the end of the day. And that's kind of like the thing I was saying I wish there was more of within the Christian groups of like, I get it, there's this, there's that, there's all these different denominations, but at the end of the day, we all have the same goal here. And it's at the end of the day, they're all one people. Now, we're definitely 100% about to do this logo here. Society for Humanistic Judaism. Whew, man, you're throwing a curveball at me here because on one end, it looks very childish and very much like a rec center. It looks like a daycare, not a rec center. It's like a daycare for Jewish kids. That's what it reminds me of, the logo. But it also kind of seems like it could be a good logo. Maybe it's the legs. I feel like the legs really ruin it for me. This part here, I guess, is okay. Even though at one point he is kind of just like shooting fireballs out his hands. We got to acknowledge that. It's like, it's strange, but I enjoy parts of it. I also don't enjoy parts of it very equally. This is a very conflicting one for me because I want to either put it at like the very last or the middle. Okay, it's going to be number 5.
Now, what about Messianic Jews? Well, Messianic Jews are really Christians, so I actually talked about them already on my series about Christian denominations.
And I already judged the logo, and I'll do it again just for the new ones here. But this one it's not hitting as well either. This one looks like a store chain. I don't know if I mentioned that the first time, but I'm saying it now. This is all coming off at the top of the head every time, guys. Remember that. This one looks like a well-established store chain. You know, like this would be like the Masonic Jewish Alliance of American version of Walmart.
If you're interested to hear my take on them, you can find it in episode 8. Okay, so that was just how Judaism works in the US and maybe a few other countries like Canada and the UK. In the UK, there are actually 2 major Reform denominations, Liberal Judaism and the Movement for Reform Judaism. However, quite recently in...
Guys, what's up with these logos? I love these. Liberal Judaism, I like this one. This one's really good. And the Movement for Reform Judaism, guys, you guys were knocking it out the park with this one. Look at that. You got the, what do they call that thing again? You know what I'm talking about. The candle is the menorah? No, that can't be it. I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, Jewish people. I don't know. I can't remember what that's called right now. But this Star of David is hitting like, bro. Whoever these Jewish people are, they hired the best designers. Like, okay, I'm still kind of liking that conservative one, the synagogue conservatives. But considering the names are so good too, plus, man, something about this one is just hitting hard. This one here, it's like immediate. You know what that is. I love these both.
April of 20.
I'm contemplating whether the synagogue should still be number 1. These are definitely like I'm looking at number either 2 or 3, or number 1 and 2 right now. Like top 4, these two.
2023, they announced their intention to merge into a single organization. They also have a chief rabbi.
Whoa, they're about to merge? Yo, their logo is about to be incredible. Nobody else is about to stand a chance. Their logo is about to be incredible. I'm sorry, guys.
Rabbi for their Orthodox Jews, who you might have seen in the news recently as he participated in the coronation of King Charles III.
Wow.
Let's now look at how Judaism works in Israel, which now has a Jewish population that has surpassed that of the United States. Although Reform and conservative synagogues do exist in Israel in small numbers, the Reform conservative Orthodox trichotomy is far less important there. Instead, in Israel, Jews are usually classified into 4 main categories. First, there are the Haloni. These are secular Jews, and they actually make up a full half of all the Jews in Israel. Next are the Masorti, who are traditional, meaning that they are only partially observant. They make up another quarter of the Israeli population. The final quarter consists of the Dati and Haredi. These are the fully observant Jews, with the Haredi, like I discussed earlier, being the most strictly observant. Now, I'm not going to address Zionism in this video, because Zionism is more of a political thing than a religious thing. Individual Jews across the world and across all denominations have differing views on Zionism and the politics within Israel. So it's important to remember that just because someone is Jewish, that doesn't mean that they support every single thing that the state of Israel does. But
guys, think of it just like being an American. You know how like you guys love to on America, even though you love America? It's very much like that. You know, not everybody, just because you like America doesn't mean you support everything America does. Just because you are American doesn't mean you're going to support all American beliefs and politics. If you're Jewish, you probably don't support everything Israel does. Some things you're like, whoa, I had nothing to do with that. I'm just a guy. or a girl, you know? Also, since we're here, I never do this, but US flag, Israeli flag, I'm American, so I'm a little bit biased here. I do like the US flag a little bit more, but I enjoyed this one. I always felt like the Star of David was some really cool things. Like, I don't know if you're allowed to have tattoos, but I feel like if you're Jewish, you should probably get a Star of David tattoo. If I was Jewish, I would definitely 100% get a Star of David tattoo and just be like, ah, yeah, guys, I'm just one of the cool Jews, I think that things can be changed and they're unbinding.
Turning to the four categories of Israeli Jews, I want to make it clear that these are not four different denominations. For the most part, Israeli Jews are not really divided into denominations at all. Instead, anything to do with Jewish religious matters in Israel falls under the jurisdiction of the two chief rabbis, one of whom represents Ashkenazi Jews and the other who represents Sephardi Jews. This system is actually the one that is used in most countries in the world. Some countries, such as France, have just one chief rabbi, whereas others, like Argentina, have two. Okay, so that was a look at the family tree of Jewish denominations. Now, as you might know, Jews are famous for having differing opinions on just about everything. So, in a few weeks' time, the Jewish history YouTuber Sam Aronow will be releasing a video in which he sort of reacts to mine and gives you his own take on the subject. His will be a bit more chronological and will include a look at some denominations that lasted for a little while but then went extinct. So keep an eye out for that.
Guys, I'm already reacting to his channel, so that's going to be interesting. Maybe I should do that.
Thanks for watching.
Throw up a like goal. Yeah, guys, another incredible video by UsefulCharts. I actually learned a lot about about the Jewish people today. I didn't learn too much about Jewish denominations because guess what? Turns out you guys don't really have denominations like that. You have like different sets within your group, but it doesn't work the same way. I actually got a really good explanation on Judaism in general. Like, I actually got like a really good, idea and viewpoint of the rules, like how people see themselves and like go about themselves being Jewish. Like, kind of like how you, I guess, I guess like how you go about like your practice versus not like why you're doing your practice. It's more important to know what you're doing versus like why you're doing it in this scenario. And I understand that because like, again, I feel like the Lord is like your parent, your father, your mom, whatever you in your mind you're saying. But like when they give you a command, it is kind of like just blindly do it. Don't ask questions why, stay in a child's place, all those things that, your parents tell you when you're young. So it's a very interesting concept, and I actually enjoyed learning about that. The Orthodox Jews and the more conservative, and then like the liberal Jewish people, or Reformed Jews. I'm sorry, like it's very interesting to see how they're pretty much just like the same. They're just kind of like, hey, this is how much that we're personally like saying needs to be changed or kept the same. And it's very similar to what Christians did, but just in a less outward way. Like when Christians saw their differences, they were like, okay, no, we're making clear signs here. We're writing the whole rules. We got the rules on why this is different, guys. Here's our whole playbook. No, we're not part of you guys because we're doing this. We got our own rules here. We do baptism this way. The Anabaptists, you're different. So yeah, I that's, and again, guys, I'm just a guy on YouTube here. Don't come at me, Anabaptists. I just think that, that whole situation was just funny and ridiculous. But yeah, as far as this Jewish information goes, again, very informative. I want to do another Jewish video as well. So again, guys, recommend something for me in the comments down below. Just something interesting about the Jewish history that, would be informative but also just be entertaining for you guys. Would you want to see me learn about? If you're Jewish, throw in some comments. With some good Jewish stuff. Hit me, guys. Not don't actually physically hit me. Just hit the like button. That's what you should be hitting. So, with that being said, clearly I'm just rambling here. So, if you made it this far, congratulations. You got to hear me ramble. And if you want to hear more of me rambling along and going on this journey, I want you guys to make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That's the more important one. Subscribe. Also commenting. I actually like reading all the comments. So comment. And also, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a stiffler, but like liking the video also helps. It'd be weird to see a bunch of subscribers and comments from it and then it not also have likes. So just throwing it out there. But as always, guys, if you made it this far, congratulations. You heard a lot of rambling and it was some mildly entertaining. And as always, thank you. You're incredible. I appreciate you. Bye.